Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Secretary, I want to touch on just two subjects. First, we've had a lot of discussion about the taxes and jobs and getting the economy going, but can I just touch real quick on the free trade agreements? I know the President has made his goal to double exports in the next 5 years, and in light of that goal, can you explain a little more forcefully why the administration hasn't encouraged, at least more forcefully, the majority party here to act on some of the pending free trade agreements that we have right now that will increase exports and produce jobs? I know there's been some progress on South Korea, but Europe's moved in the direction now, has already come to an agreement with South Korea, and I'm just wondering sort of when will this hurdle actually move forward?
I agree with you, and the President agrees with you, that one of the most important things we can do to expand exports and increase jobs in this country is to make sure we're playing a major role in those growing markets. And as you know, the President in June committed to bring to conclusion the free trade agreement with Korea so that he can present it to the Congress, we hope, by the end of this year. And to make that possible, of course, we have to be able to demonstrate that this is an agreement that's a good deal for Americans, and we need to find a way to get enough support in this body and in the Congress that we can actually pass it. But it's very important to us as a country that we don't leave those markets to our competitors.
So it would be your opinion, Mr. Secretary, that the ratification of those pending agreements would create jobs and would help?
Can I say it slightly differently? We have to make sure that we have agreements in place that provide a good deal for American businesses and American workers. So where we have strong agreements that meet that test, it would be very important to us to make them law.
Okay. And I want to follow back up because, the Basel discussion earlier on the capital standards. I want to ask a question just about capital formation. And, the financial reform bill that is now law changed the net worth test for meeting the accredited investor standard. And I'm just wondering, did you support those changes? Do you believe that altering the accredited investor standard will impact the ability now of entrepreneurs to raise capital and take their companies public, some of those standard changes?
You're testing my memory of the origin of that provision, and I'd be happy to look at it in more detail and come back to you. But my general view, and I think it's supported by how the broader financial markets investment community had reacted to this bill, is that this will provide a better system for companies to go raise capital, and a better system, better way for us to make sure that the entrepreneurs of the future, business of the future, can go out and raise capital at attractive terms.
I just spend some time talking with some of these folks that do this private investing, and they include the assets of their home, et cetera, as a part of meeting the accredited investor standard. And with the changes that have occurred, there's a concern that they're not going to have the liquidity to actually provide. And they've invested in companies, they've helped create companies that have actually provided job growth. And that's, again, part of that uncertainty equation that's out there, which is why I raised that.
Well, I would be happy again to ask my colleagues to take a closer look at the potential impacts of that provision, because I think we share the same objective. Is we want to make sure that we want to make our system more stable, because we saw how devastating it is when it's not. But we also want to make sure that it goes back to the business of providing ability for people to raise capital at appropriate terms.
Well, and without that access to capital, of course, business slows. Without a regulatory certainty, capital disappears. And I guess in November of this year, I think it's November 18th, the SEC is going to convene some sort of a gathering of 2010 Government Finance Forum on Small Business Capital Formation. And in advance of that meeting, can you tell us or describe whether you believe that a small company should be subject to the same regulatory demands that a Fortune 500 company, for instance, might be required to shoulder as a part of the discussion that could take place?
Can I answer it slightly differently, but I'd be happy to come back to the broader question. I think that I believe that small banks should not be subjected to the same basic standards that are necessary for the large systemic institutions. And what we propose is a much tougher set of rules on the large institutions, tough enough that they will be more stable, but still competitive, but a lower standard of protections for small banks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Madam Chair.